Good afternoon, everyone. Could we have some energy after having that amazing lunch? Woo, thank you. Okay. So I'm thrilled and excited to share with you how we can shape the future through intent-driven UX for AI. And the reason why UX is important, we would be learning through that. Now, I am a strategic AI UX lead at EcoWiz that you would be perhaps knowing thanks to Raj, who's our amazing founder and has introduced all of you to SageSpark. My previous experience was in Deloitte, TEDx MIT, and Collinson, which is a UK-based company. And all of these experiences put together, along with my master's in science in human-computer interaction, has helped me to bring this approach of where intent-driven UX and how we can leverage it in our startup ecosystem. We are going to be unlocking 4 key areas. One is the basics of AI and UX, intent-based principles, discovering it in action, and practical strategies to create your own impactful AI-powered designs today. So UX, user experience, is the heartbeat of any product, service, or system. It is an interaction of how it works, how it feels, and how well it solves users' problem. Don Norman is known as the father of UX and Jacob Nielsen as the king of usability. They mention it time and over again that it's very critical to know what true users want. There's a startling statistics that say 90% of the startups fail due to this reason, that they do not understand what is the user intent. And as startup ecosystem, the market is competitive, so this is going to be our edge, and that is UX. Now, when we hear UX, oftentimes we'll hear the word UI. UI stands for user interface. But think of UX more as a yummy cake, but UI is the decoration on it. It's the icing on it. So if the UX isn't great, the UI, the decoration, will not matter. So as startups, it's important first to focus on UX, and then as you're reiterating and developing, you create that UI. Now, user interface paradigms of computing. Before we get into where we are today, it's important to understand where we came from. In 1890s, US Census Bureau was drowning in data. So Mr. Herman brought up this idea of punch cards, and those were utilized in making sure that the data gets systemized. At that point of time, still I would call it a manual and tedious data processing era. But we should still give due credit to Mr. Herman because he laid the foundations of what we call today IBM. Now in 1960s, we had DOS and Unix that were command-based interfaces with text only. So there were no images, nothing at that sort. That led to the emergence of GUIs. GUI stands for Graphical User Interface. To explain this simply, on your laptop, when you see a recycle bin, that is a GUI. What happened here was, compared to 1890s, the user is able to now interact with it without having the full knowledge. So they can go through the interface and still have an understanding compared to having the full rigid knowledge. And now, when we shift to today, in intent-based outcome specification, this is completely reversed. Today, if you notice, for ChatGPT or any other AI platform, you are not telling it how the AI needs to do it. You just tell, for example, I want to create an email and send it to my supplier for X and Y reason. You don't care about how the AI is bringing about that change. So you're not telling it exactly how it needs to be done, but what it needs to do. And that is why this is an important aspect of intent-based outcome. And here's why it's rising in terms of conversational interfaces, and it's leveraging NLP, which is a jargon, which is natural language processing. Now, what we have seen and what we might discover next. Gen AI are powerful tools for WIN's work. This framework was developed by Mr. Paul and John, and I had the opportunity to meet them at the World Gen AI conference held in Boston last year. Over there, they mentioned about this framework, WINS, which means as a professional, when you're trying to think, okay, if I want to use AI, how do I leverage it to the best of the intent? You think about wins. Words, images, numbers, and sound. Anything related to it, make sure you're using Gen AI. Uncovering behavioral insights. This is something that we have been observing throughout our lives. A system is observing user action and the motivation to identify patterns. Let's take an example. Spotify has a yearly end, one of those curated kind of playlist that says, okay, this is how you have created it. And that kind of delights users to say, oh yes, this is the song I've played throughout the year. And that's something personalized for you. Breaking the mold from static to dynamic. Again, if we look at the behavioral insights, we are transitioning from single experience design into context-aware and personalized suggestions. An example here is today when you sit with your friend's feed would look completely different than yours. Now we have come to grapple around with that concept that yes, perhaps the feeds are different, that means the data is different, but think of it from a user interface point of view. And that I think is going to come up in the 1 or 2 years, where the interface itself will also be different for each user. Augmenting human creativity. Oh my, this is a debated one. I feel that Gen AI fosters divergent thinking. It connects two different concepts and brings it together. So this is the first time that first we think about the function and then shaping the design, right? So for example, if say an automobile person wants to figure out, okay, how do I design a flying automobile? So they don't have to start from scratch. They can use generative AI to augment it and create these kind of images that were created with stable diffusion. Intent-based interface. We heard about this term. Intent-based interface is basically when you understand what is it that exactly the user is trying to give and exactly give them. Now it may sound all jargony, but hold a second and I'll show you with an example of what I exactly mean. There are 3 types of interfaces. One is the reactive interface, basically here where the human, great, you can see the mouse. So your human is able to prompt their reference data, their output criteria, and it gives this discrete input into the machine. The machine then goes on, generates, and gives you some kind of result. Should the user accept it, it becomes a completed task. But should the user most likely be, like how we reiterate, it goes back until the time we have a completed task. In terms of proactive interface, the key difference is where the machine is using continuous human input. So human is thinking in usual activity, but the AI has already thought about an identified support opportunity. And it's giving output based on that. So if the user again chooses to accept AI support, he or she will have an AI accelerated activity. And that would complete the task quicker. But again, user is always given a choice in terms of flexibility. Should they choose to, they can go through their usual activities and complete their task. The third one is the one that we see the most, and that is hybrid interface. This is Google's user-tested micro-interaction design. The key point here is the NLB bar, which is the natural language bar. In this particular bar, it's leveraging function calling. What it is doing is through all of these screens, it's creating a callable function with input widgets as parameters. The key factor here is this generative variability that you can see. So proactively, it's already showing suggestions, but it's also showing your users that, hey, if you want more proactive suggestions, you can just click on this and we'll make it work. Now I promised you that I'll come up with an example to show you how it's going to actually work, intent-based in real time. So think about banking. Say you want to make a transaction to your friend through a banking app. I know UPI is very popular, but say you want to do it through a banking app. You want to transfer $40 to Robert for dinner. You have to go through multiple screens, right? To get that. If you want to change anything, it's a task in itself to find out. You have to figure out, you have to Google. But a way to think about this is through these two things. For example, if there was a bar, an LB bar, show shopping expenses, and you're exactly redirected to where it needs to be. Similarly, for credit card limit, I mean, I have myself faced like, how do I set my TPT limit? And I had to Google it multiple times. And so you can navigate and fill values automatically. This is a live interaction that you can see on Flutter sample app. It's built by Mr. Hans, who's from Netherlands. He's an amazing guy. You must check him out for resources. These are some of the tools that I enjoy experimenting as of today. These are some for prototyping. And as a researcher, I also go for Dovetail and Atlas TI for qualitative research, as well as Miro AI for analytics. I'd highly urge you all to try it. And before we wrap up, it's very important to understand what are the metrics that define success. ChatGPT, within 2 months, reached 100 million users. Take into account TikTok or a Spotify, that still took a long enough time. But is that really how we want to define metrics of success? Think about 1 month retention, okay? Incumbents basically means what are the existing platforms and AI-first companies. When we take a median into account, 63% is an average 1 month retention, compared to an AI-first company, which is a 42%. Similarly, for DAO and MAU, which is basically daily active users and monthly active users, you see that the difference is far more, 51% median and 14% median. Okay, all these are numbers. What does it mean for us? It means that users are interested in the novelty of generative AI, but they really don't see value in it. And if we want to really showcase value, our wedge, which is our competitive advantage, is definitely going to be intent-based interfaces. And that will be a make or kill, because there are already killer apps out there. So how do you differentiate that? And that's going to be a differentiating factor. The faster you move, the easier for you to scale. In conclusion, what does it mean for your startup? Here are some practical actionable steps that you can do today. Empower your users by solving critical pain points. So I would urge you to identify one critical pain point that your AI can address. I'm biased on this, you can definitely use SageSpark. You can define your second point is that you define your user intent to map out contextual journeys for key touch points. The third one is you analyze behavioral data that you get. Whether it be market research, just try to put that into perspective and see what are the natural occurring behaviors, and through that you'll get some insight that will be super useful to build your app. Prototyping with modern tools. Use the latest AI tools, stay updated. I'm also in this journey where I'm learning alongside, and then keep sharing that knowledge. And fifth one is collect user feedback, run A/B testing. Don't just sit on data, because that data is going to be key for you to win. That's all I have for now, but I definitely do want to thank you all for being patient and listening through this, and I am sure that this is going to be useful for you. So please do connect with me. I am always eager to learn new ideas, think through, and help strategize. And today's topic was collaboration. So let's collaborate, let's innovate. Thank you.